is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, everybody. Welcome to episode number 239 of Sports Cards Live. It's Saturday night, September the 7th, 2024. And my name is Jeremy Lee. And I would like to thank everyone who watched and listened to our last episode, big episode Saturday. That was with Brian Gray a couple of weekends ago. And last night with the management team from the National. Thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow night, Fanatics Collect weekly hockey auction show with Josh Madigan from The Gong Show is back, guys. Filth Bomb Breaks offers live case and box breaks, and they do so with responsibility and integrity. If you enjoy box breaks and are looking for a company to break with, check out Filth Bomb streaming on Fanatics Live, 4 channels, 7 days per week. And if you are looking to add a grail into your collection, make sure to check out Fund Your Cards, the hobby's leading consolidator. They will help you finance the purchase of your cards with your own cards. Visit fundyourcards.com. Check out also the new Fund Your Cards show here on Sports Cards Live. 3 episodes in the can. Well, they're out there and ready to be seen on the Sports Cards Live channel. And guys, Mint Inc. is a leading hobby brand in Canada. They offer a full range of services from in-person shopping and live event experiences at their 2 Toronto locations to online shopping and with worldwide shipping, auctions, breaks, grading, and more. Mint Inc.'s primary focus is to bring the ultimate hobby experience to collectors in Canada. And on every episode of Sports Cards Live through the end of this year, they will be giving away a $50 gift card that is valid in their online store, mintink.ca. And we will be doing that later tonight. Guys, check out hobbynewsdaily.com for daily hobby news articles and a podcast. Big fan of that website and news outlet. And Leighton Sheldon from Just Collect will be joining us a little bit later tonight for the Vintage Spotlight segment. And guys, this show is available wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, everywhere else. Follow and subscribe for free. And please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. Would greatly appreciate that. And thank you, as always, to all of our loyal viewers and listeners. And if you're not yet subscribed, please take a moment and do so. And as always, tonight, your comments and your questions are in play. Let's get to tonight's guest. He started in the hobby when he'd go grocery shopping with his mom and getting packs, riding his bike to the LCS with his buddies every weekend as a kid. When Kobe and LeBron entered the NBA, his interest peaked and reeled him back in. During the pandemic, he jumped in with both feet, flipping wax and singles. He started sports card content at that time and now collaborates with several other content creators. His favorite athletes of all time are Don Mattingly, Michael Jordan, Mike Alstott, and Barry Sanders. And his favorite teams of all time are the Tampa Bay Rays, Buccaneers, and the Lightning. He's originally and currently hailing out of Tampa, Florida. Let's bring him out. Michael Hamm. Welcome to Sports Cards Live, buddy. How are you doing tonight?
Good. How you doing tonight, buddy?
We're just happy to be here, aren't we?
Yeah, we're just happy to be here. I mean, it's just we're talking about stuff we love. I mean, what are we doing in life here?
Exactly. We're here to talk about cards. We're here to talk about the hobby. We are going to do that. You know, you're somebody, Michael. I call you Ham. You're somebody, yeah. Ham.
Oh, a lot of people do. It's either Ham or Mike Ham. That's the only thing people call me. Like, that's just how it works in life. All my jobs, school, it doesn't matter. If you start to know me, you just straight call me Ham, or it's just Mike Ham, like it's one word. It's just really always how it works.
Yeah, no, it's funny because that's how I refer to you. But I feel like I've known you for a long time. I think we first met in person at the Chicago National 2021.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have known you pre-doing content, which would have been 19. There was no show in 20. I remember seeing you. We walked the floor a little bit together, all the way back in 2021. You were an early viewer of my show in the chat. I remember that fondly. And then we got to, we've seen each other at shows throughout, but this past national in Cleveland, you surprised me with a really cool gift. And I got it. Do you mind if I show them?
No, please do. Please, I'm proud of it. So please do.
This guy's, I don't know if anybody knows, but this is the missing card, the mystery card from the 1910 C56 set, card number 99, which actually no one thought ever existed. And you found me 4 of them. And I don't know if anybody can see, but I'm joking. That is my face superimposed on Newsy Lalonde's face here from the original hockey card set. And those are really, really well done. I love that, man. Thank you again.
You're very welcome.
Thank you again for doing that. So we got lots of people in the chat already. Good evening. Welcome everybody to the show. I feel like I haven't done a Saturday episode of SCL for a while, but it's only been a couple weeks. We had Brian Gray on last time. Did you catch any of that episode, Ham?
Oh, of course.
Always fun with Brian Gray, don't you think?
It's always fun. He's baiting us in right now with whatever he's got going on. He's now been talking about it for now a good month. Yeah. And still, it's now up to somebody else to let us know when he can let us know about what he's doing. Right. I know he's a hype man too, so I'm curious if it's going to be as big as he's making it out to be. I know he has his own grandeur and stuff, but I want to hear it out of the horse's mouth first before I tell you how big it is.
I hope it's not like, oh, that's it. Like we're going to be like, I want it to be something exciting, right?
Yeah, it's like when somebody comes out with a new fancy card and you see it and you're like, that's not good.
Yeah, no. And so last night I did a Sports Cards Light episode here. Mm-hmm. I had on the management team from the National. You were in the chat. Yep. Did you have any sort of takeaways from that? Anything you found interesting?
No, I mean, the most of the stuff they went through is the stuff we had already complained about going right after. Because we're all making content and immediately we go right into what we didn't like or we discuss it during the process. The only thing I thought that was a little weird when they were talking about the Wi-Fi and cell service and being structurally for that building was difficult. John Mangini works in that industry and he's already talked about it before. People will bring those units in for free to make sure you have it because there's some other backdoor benefit to it. So I don't know if maybe they just don't know about that type of system being available. But I do know it's available too for convention centers that don't have good structure. They bring in these units that are basically pulling in juice from the outside to act like the outside's the inside. Mm. All right. I mean, I've been in places that are 3 stories deep and I have cell service. That shouldn't be possible. So I know it's possible. That's the one thing. Everything else is just what they have to try and fix. I liked how you brought up about the future events. Are you locked into Chicago? I guess the question I would always love, what happens, God forbid, the Chicago building burns down. We can't go to it. Where do we go? Like what's the hard backup?
Yeah, that's a really interesting scenario. What if the building literally burns down? Then
or is mechanically non-functional? All the ACs go out. Like, what do you do? And that's it. What's your backup?
Yeah. You need They need some sort of like emergency plan to handle the unpredictable, really, even though we just sort of predict it. But yeah, I hear you. I'm not, I talked to John Mangini at the National about cell service, and yeah, he certainly seems to know that business, and maybe he needs to talk to those guys at some point or send them an email and say, hey, I know how to fix this problem, but I don't know. That's about all I can say about that. Is hopefully it's not an issue for the next 3 years in Chicago. They certainly have their heart in the right place.
It can't be an issue moving into that. Nobody had issues during the Fanatics event. So you can't, again, whether or not they want to say they're in direct competition with Fanatics moving forward, they are. And we know Fanatics, is playing nice. Hey, we need them, blah, blah, blah. They want all of it. Okay. No matter what you think, they want all of it. And this Orlando show that they're going to be doing in Florida in November here, roughly like a month and a couple weeks or a week out. It's supposed to be like bigger than Dallas. So if that's the case, in Florida's, people don't realize how many cards and card people are in Florida. It is crazy. That's why when I go to the National, I'm like, I see the stuff in Tampa all the time. I'm like, there's not a whole lot of oohing and ahhing for me, unless it's a $150,000 card.
Yeah. What's kind of, I think of Florida and a certain hobby character comes to mind for me when I think of Florida, and it, not to represent the whole hobby community down there, but I think of Investacard when I think of Florida.
Okay.
Wasn't he? Isn't that where he was out of?
Yeah, he's down here too. But I mean, again, we have SGC, CGC down here as well. Mealy Pops is up in Jacksonville. We have the stuff in West Palm Beach. I mean, it's everybody retires in Florida, so they bring their cards with them. And then they're retired, so they start setting up at shows, so it's a mix.
Is that where the AA Mint store are they in Florida also? Do you know that shop I'm talking about? It's pretty
I don't know that. Doesn't ring a bell.
Store. I don't know. Florida's not exact. I mean, it might be small geographically, but there's big cities there. There's lots of people, lots of hobbyists for sure. Speaking of Florida, I mean, you've lived there your whole life, and you have a unique sports fan experience in that all the teams came to Florida during your life, right? All of them. The Bucks,
which makes it hard because everybody's from somewhere else down here.
Yeah.
And they don't steer off of their teams, especially from up north. We get a lot of snowbirds from Canada down here.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you go to a certain, especially baseball, I mean, other teams represent better than Tampa does a lot of times at the stadium. You know, and the Yankees are in town. You can cheer as a Rays fan, but you are outnumbered. It's not even funny. Okay.
Right.
It's like 90% Yankees, 10% Rays. And the same thing with the Boston fans. Those fans that'll show up, they're never going to give up their allegiance. And it's the same thing with football. It's just how it is. There'll be a Bucks fan all the way up till their team gets there, and then they're fully garbed out. And you're like, what happened to you?
Yeah. But so were you a fan of any team in any of those sports before the teams came to Tampa and you converted, or when they came, you were just kind of fresh and ready to go?
Yeah, Yankees for sure. Being down here in Tampa and having the spring training for the Yankees, they've been down here. Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth was down here. You know what I mean? It's just that and the Reds. Because like we used to go watch the Reds when Lou Piniella was also doing the minor leagues down here, and they'd let us run the fields. They'd sign everything we wanted. You know, it was a different time at that point too. But Yankees growing up, and that's why Don Mattingly is my original favorite player growing up, because that's just the guy. And at that point, I didn't even, because when he came in as a rookie, I was 6, maybe 7. I wasn't even really into cards yet. I didn't know Don Mattingly yet. But because Yankees, my dad liked the Yankees. That was Donnie Baseball, and the guy had baseball in his nickname. You gotta like that guy, you know. So that's where I adopted that, and then moved forward. After that, football was definitely the second thing, and then basketball's Orlando's all we've ever had. So it's always been that distant sport for the.
What about the Lightning?
As soon as they came in I went to the very first preseason game. I went to the very first regular season, very first playoff game. I go to games all the time. That is the number one sport in Tampa by far. Yeah, even over the Bucks. I mean, there's more games obviously, but Lightning are almost sold out every game, and they play 5 times as many games as a football team for a whole season, where the Bucks are only here 8 or 9 games. So I mean, that gives you a really good. And then Jeffrey Vinnick, the owner here, wow, fantastic. And I've heard rumors that he's trying to possibly sell, and we're like, no, you're stuck here.
That's really. I had no idea. That's really cool to hear. I wonder if part of it is because of all the Canadian snowbirds that are down in Florida during the winter and going to watch their teams coming down or not. I mean, in the late 70s, my grandparents used to summer or winter in Florida, and I used to go down there for a couple weeks over Christmas vacation and to Fort Lauderdale. How far is that from Tampa?
Probably 2.5 hours.
Okay, so not too close. I don't know, but we used to
fly on the side of the
state. I feel like we flew in through Tampa, but again, this is literally 40-something years ago. So
that time Fort Lauderdale didn't probably have an airport. You either had to fly into Miami, which was tiny at the time and not built, or you had to go to Tampa, Orlando. That would be it.
Let's say hello to the people in the chat. Chris C is looking forward to to the Hamburglar of sports cards. Jacob Dahl, what is going on, my friend? Michael Stone in the house. Hey, what's going on, buddy? Good evening to you. Jeff McMahon, hello to you. Happy to have you. Chris C, good evening again. Jason Pringle, my buddy Pat, he's got patio, beer, sports cards live. He's ready for an epic night. Good to see you, Jay.
There you go.
Good to see you, buddy. Skeppy in the house. Robert Scott, good evening to you. 99-cent cards. Got my ham sandwiches. Let's go. Michael Hamm's wrestling career. What's this all about?
Some people mistake me for X-Pac out in the real world. So
okay.
that's sometimes. And then I work with an ex WWF wrestler that was slightly big in the early 90s to late 2000s, named Shannon Moore. So I see them and get to hang out. He always introduces me to people. There's so many famous athletes in Tampa. He'll hey, meet so-and-so. I'm like, I don't know who you are. And he's like, oh, he's wrestling tomorrow night. I'm like, oh, cool. It's weird.
Right on. Eric in the house says, "Watch out for this guy. He's trouble." Hey, I know him too. I know he's a little bit of trouble. Thanks, Eric. Tom McDonald, what's going on? Mike Double V in the house. Good to see you, buddy. Rose Rips says the Card Hammer representing Tampa.
That's Dave. Dave's a personal friend of mine down here. I met him originally by just standing in line waiting for cards coming out of the pandemic. I've made some very good friends from that because we'd have like our own core group to try to make sure we all could get cards and share. Where you were going against people who are trying to hoard everything. So we would group up.
That's nice to work together. Triple V in the house. What's going on? Chris says, I'll go to Burbank since the National avoids the West Coast. Jeff Hart, good evening to you. Jeremy M, what's going on? Vintage Card Collector says, the National leadership has a lot to worry about. The building burning down isn't one of them. Mark Santucci, my weekend off last week was very nice. I mean, last weekend came with its own, sad things that happened in the world. But Mark Santucci, I appreciate it. Had a nice weekend. Orlando is here. Good to see you.
How you doing, Orlando?
Orlando says is Orlando losing it a little bit? He says you're an awesome guy.
No. Orlando's so likable anyway. I mean, he's papa of the sports cards here. So, I mean, like everybody loves Orlando.
I know. And we're not talking about the city. We are talking about the man behind the YouTube channel.
Yeah, Orlando, that's in Miami.
Yeah. Very confusing. Skeppy says Ham would have to be pretty old to predate the Dolphins.
Yeah, not that old.
He's so old, this guy. Look at him. Yes, Mark Santucci, Mattingsley rookie is 1984, card number 8. Very good piece of trivia right there from Mark Santucci. Jake Dahl, this is a great question. What are your thoughts on Stamkos leaving the Lightning and going to Nashville after what seemed to be a bit of a miscommunication or a snub by ownership or management of the Lightning towards him? What happened there?
It sucks that he left. He's going to retire a Lightning player. At the end of the day, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame as a Lightning player. It's the money. It's just what it is. Where we are, we have Braden Point and Kucherov. Those are our two guys. Stamkos came up or replaced LeCavier in St. Louis with him and a couple we have a structure that works and they're not deviating from that structure. Keep your key defensemen, move off, keep a couple of young core offensive guys and build around them. And that's what they're doing. We have a great goaltender. So
yeah. I mean, and you still have great players.
But it's a money thing. When the guy gets older, you can't pay him that type of money. At the end of the day, Stamkos became a guy that lines up at one side of the ice and just fires. Like he's definitely slower on defense. He just, again, for what they're trying to do, they're doing it from a business standpoint. They would have loved to keep him.
Fair enough. It's the business of sport, no doubt. Orlando is in Fort Lauderdale. There we go.
The new Miami.
And Michael Stone has a great question for you, Ham. How did those guys sucker you into doing off-center? So we're talking about the Off-Centered show, which happens every second Wednesday between Dustin, Sports Cards Dad, Flippin' Steve, and Neo. And it streams out to a couple of, or maybe all their channels. But answer, how did they sucker you in, Ham?
I'm always in the chat, and it's just one of those things. I think Dustin knows that I like to fire Steve up a little bit because we'll be confrontational sometimes. Not negatively, but I'll fire them up, and I'm that guy that'll ask the odd question or go against the grain. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes because that's just how I think. And it was just a dynamic, I think, to add to the show. It was very nice of them to invite me again. What it showed you is it wasn't something. Listen, I only have like 2,000 subscribers on my channel, and I think Dustin and Neo are like 15 and 20,000 or something. And then Steve, obviously, national giveaway and stuff like that, which is a very big thing that we do. We just did our fantasy football started this week for the Content Creator League for that. But I think it's just a dynamic. I'm one of the guys of the group, and I think they've just felt like, hey, let's invite Mike into this and be a part of this because he's part of our crew.
Yeah, at first you were kind of a guest appearance, and I watched and I thought, yeah, you fit in really great on the show. And I have noticed that you and Flip and Steve do kind of butt heads a little bit, but it's all in good fun, right? You guys
no, 100. Well, listen, I go to every national I've been to. I've roomed with Steve. I've pushed
brothers.
I picked him up from the airport and wheeled him out in a wheelchair when he had his busted leg at the Atlanta show, and walked around with him, made sure I got him everywhere. No, I mean, these guys are like become family friends to me. I care about them. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, Michael Stone says you do add a lot to the show, Ham, which is
it.
yeah, for sure. I got to call out Michael Stone though. This guy, I mean, I've seen him in the chats, I've seen him in other chats, and but talk about a friendly guy who gave me some rides at National.
I talked to
was
him
awesome.
almost every day that I saw him there.
Yeah, good dude right there, guys. Michael Stone, good dude. Good, and he lives in the area, I believe, not too far from yeah, he's from Northeast Ohio, so it was good to see him. Edward Caudle in the house, Rookies to Legends Sports Cards, welcome to the show. And Jay Giuliano wants to know how you thought your Content League draft went.
I thought it went well. I'm happy with my team. I think I got good sustainability off of my bench. My biggest problem is going to be is just a couple bye weeks where I got 3 to 4 guys that I have to swap out at the same time, which is never fun. So those are the ones I'm going to have to be the most conscious about. But other than that, I mean, so we're getting ready to finish up week 1. We got till Monday. I'm currently winning on my against the other team. So I like my chances because the other guy had Patrick Mahomes, and my wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes outscored Patrick Mahomes, who throws him the ball. So I was like, wow. Okay, yeah. I'll take that.
That'll do. I like this. Vintage says Neo usually isn't paying attention, so there's 3.5 guys on the show. He's always looking off.
Neo has 3 screens up going on. If there's a basketball game going on, and eBay over here, ComC over here.
He's busy. He's busy working. The show is
multitasking.
The show doing off-centered is a distraction for him, right? But at least he shows up. Let's talk some card topics here.
Yep.
Let's jump into one of my favorites because it's so divisive is cards as investments.
I love it.
You know what? Yeah, go.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, the current hobby is about money, monetary gains. This is where all the complaining comes from and everything else. But at the end of the day, it's about flipping cards for the most part. I mean, flipping Steve, that's where his name originally came from. He would tell you, this is how you invest in these cards. You grade them and then you flip them and you make money. We've seen that over and over and over again. And that's just the direction the hobby went. When I got into it where you could flip wax right off of retail shelves and double, triple your money, it's about money again. You know, what it is we had this hobby that was very collector based. Stuff didn't really go up and down as fast and hard as it does in the last 3 or 4 years anyway. So it was always a steadily gradual gain. And most people never also bought 10 of one card as an investment. If you're buying 10 of one card, it's an investment because you only need one to be happy. So it's one of those things that you start seeing patterns, and we're almost all investing in our cards. At the end of the day, we want something that we can get value out of later. If you're not, then yes, you're just buying it to enjoy it. I get it. But at the end of the day, a lot of us target cards we know that are going to still either hold value or become worth more value later on. So I've always thought that. That was my process of prospecting, especially with baseball. You buy the young rookie, and I know today the rookies go for a stupid amount of money, especially out of Bowman first. But if you do hit on one of those, you technically got in at the cheap spot, which is the goal, right? Yeah. Otherwise, you got to play the down and back up. And I don't think long term is easy anymore.
When it comes to prospecting, for sure. So speaking of prospecting, I had a card shop from 91 till about 94, so a long time ago now. And I remember I had this one customer in particular comes to mind where he would come in, he'd have his album with the 9 pocket sheets in it, and he would want to fill up each page with 9 cards of every rookie from the Upper Deck hockey set or the basketball set or the football, the Russell Marylands, if you remember, the Dikembe Mutombos and the Kip Millers. These were all, and he wanted all of them. So, and the Stefan Moran, who, never went anywhere. So even back in the early 90s, people were hoarding to do that because we talk about how are we in a junk wax era, a junk parallel era, a junk slab era? What are we in right now? But even back in the early 90s, people were putting away cards thinking they were going to pay for their children's college education with that.
But what was interesting about the 90s, we had just had that boom. And that's when stuff blew up with printing, for instance, all the 90s stuff. So you still had the mindset, you still wanted to get the rookie cards or main rookies. The problem we had was it was so overprinted and readily available, it never became worth anything. That's really what happened. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal is a perfect example of this. His cards should still be worth more than what they are, because of everything he's done, not only on the court, but off the court. Like, this guy is just literally a living legend, and the legend term hasn't caught up to him yet. And the majority of his really good cards are not going to be his rookie cards because it was printed in that era.
Yeah.
That's just how it's going to be.
Some great comments coming in, but one more sort of comment to you that I'd like you to address is, you know, when we say, and you're not the only one to say it, and it seems like a lot of people see it that way, that the whole hobby's become about money. Buy a card to sell it for more. I know you know that that's not 100% of the people. There are still people who are really just collecting for a hobby. So when you say, or you hear someone say that, you know, the hobby, it's not really about collecting anymore, even though I'm not saying that, but we hear that said, it's about flipping and the money side of it. How do you in your mind reconcile the fact that, well, there are still traditional collectors out there, and a lot of them, like I've been collecting cards for over 40 years, but I'm also well aware of the monetary value of my cards.
Correct.
You know, so how do you kind of reconcile all that?
I always try to identify that with an individual, because the worst thing that we see, and if you've been in the hobby enough and at tables enough, there are people like, oh, I want that for my PC. As soon as that comes out of your mouth to me, and you're just trying to get as cheap as you can to flip it, and you're trying to get me on some type of soft-hearted guilt trip thing to do it, because I've seen it. And, you know, even Flippin' Steve is like, I sold this guy because it was his PC, and then turns around and he's selling it to this guy over here. And he's like, I was trying to, you know, do the kid a favor, and you thought he really liked the Larry Bird auto. And I'm like, no, the Larry Bird auto 10, that ain't his PC, buddy.
So you know what I recommend, and seriously, I recommend, and I might have to do this myself. I'm going to be at 4 or 5 shows over the next 6 or so weeks, or 2 months, I guess. You know, if someone says that, well, show me your PC. Show me your PC. Where do you store your photos? Let's see the PC. Show me this PC that you want me to add to.
That PC stuff is obscure for the most part. It's either really rare or very different, because anything that's common isn't really PC. It's just something you add to the collection of the player you like, but it's not your main PC because you could live without it. Does that make sense?
Well, for me, it makes sense.
So like here, this isn't even a sports card, but here. This Chuck Norris 1-of-1. That's a PC card. I just want it. I don't care if you want it. I wanted it. So, and I got that card. So same thing here. Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's cool. I don't want to wear this.
And you didn't, I'm guessing you didn't break the bank on neither of those 2 cards.
No, the Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee, I think I paid $90 for. And that's numbered out of 5. And then the Chuck Norris, I think I've spent $150 on. And that's a 1-of-1 on card auto. So
not breaking the bank for sure. Let's go to some comments. We've had a lot of good ones. Dylan Rantucci in the house. What's going on, buddy? Good to see you. The Card Hunter. What's happening, Ziggy? Michael Stone. How was the show you set up at? I haven't set up yet. I'm setting up 2 Saturdays from now, and then Montreal Expo, Toronto Expo, Van City Card Show, and I'm going to the Philly show in 2 weeks as well. Mark Santucci says some creators just buy cards for a collection. They don't overpay, but they're not selling, so they don't care about the price after they buy it. Fair enough. Chris C says the only cards I view as long-term investments are vintage and pre-war cards. The Grails are only 6 Powerball numbers away. That's a good way to look at it for sure. I see that early, like, so I've shown this a few times. It's on my desk because I love it. I picked up this Babe Ruth a couple weeks ago locally.
Yep.
And to me, this card serves all the purposes I have in the hobby, which is it's a PC card. I'm collecting it.
Yep.
And I also consider it to be an investment because it was to buy this cost me significant money. And anytime I lay out significant money on a card, I have to consider the future of the card for me and my family. So it serves both purposes. I get to love it while I own it, and I'm not too worried about its value maintaining and even.
Like for instance, he says long-term or vintage, which I guess if a player plays for 20 years, that's now considered a vintage card if it was 20 years ago. But like I bought the Mike Trout Bowman Chrome First Auto Beckett True 95. I bought that in 2013 for $250 as an investment. He was already the best player in baseball. I thought that was very affordable for what it was at that time, which it was. And I bought that for that reason. Same thing with my Aaron Judge auto from Bowman First. Or Bowman, it doesn't say First. That's an investment. That was originally an investment. They've worked out, but there's other guys I bought. Devin Travis didn't work out. you know. It's just
So that's yeah, there's a line between investing and prospecting. Prospecting, I think, is not even a line. Prospecting is maybe a subset of investing.
correct.
It's just much higher risk. You know, Babe Ruth is done. Michael Jordan is done. Wayne Gretzky done. All these other, prospecting, it's a much bigger risk. Let's run through some more comments. We're going to bring Leighton on for the Vintage Spotlight segment in just a few minutes. Skeppy says, what's the price threshold for the average collector to call it a pure collectible versus an investment? That's going to be different for everybody. My opinion, Skeppy, whatever, as I always say, whatever money is significant to you. To me, $500, if I'm spending $500 on a card, I want to know that I'm going to maybe be able to get that money back down the road. If I buy cards all the time for $5, $20, $150. I'm not too worried about it. I think that's just going to be different for everybody. Jason Pringle, man, did people hoard Lindros and Daig rookie cards? They sure did. Vintage says, in the current environment, there are so many easier ways to make money than flipping cards. You know what? The one thing I'll say to that, though, if you're good at it, it's not that hard. If you're not good at it, it can be harder. It really depends on your reach. Go ahead.
It's all knowledge based, though. For instance, before I've always been in cards, but like for a while to make extra money when I was having lesser jobs, back in my 20s and stuff, I yard saled every weekend, and I bought and sold stuff on eBay. And let me tell you this, way easier than cards. So much easier. People don't want crap. They don't care what it's worth. Here it is cheap. You can go sell it for triple. I don't care. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
But it's knowledge. If you don't know about it, you can't make the money. Today, if you go to a yard sale, you're going to see 5 people on their phone looking stuff up on eBay.
Right. Yeah.
It's easy, actually.
Yeah. No, that's and a lot of that is the Gary V effect, right? He started by really talking about garage sailing. So
that's where he was, because it's so easy to make money if you have knowledge of things.
Right. The professor is here. Good evening. Bob Boozle is going to fire his long-term sports card investment portfolio and hire you, Ham. Philly Joe. What's going on, Philly Joe? Good to see you. 99 cent. Yeah, rest in peace, Stefan Moran. Longtime suffering Nordiques fan. Michael Stone says, I like to think most people are like me. They flip to buy for your collection, right? I don't take issue with that at all. I think that's more than fair. No. Jay says PC personal collection. Every card we own is a PC card. Not if you have a separate box, though, Jay, that you have labeled as traders or inventory. I do have a line drawn, but I can understand that sort of outlook.
Yeah, I have 10,000 cards in this room probably, and out of the 10,000 cards, let's say 150 are truly PC.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's do 2 more comments. Then Leighton, you good to go? Leighton's good to go. All right, we'll bring Mark Santucci says, I have both cards for collection and for business. I keep an eye on the prices. Foul ball. Is that Foul 5 ball? Is that Jeremy Foul 5 ball? Or is this a new Foul ball? Foul ball, welcome to the show. Good to see you. Skeppy says, surely you take Chuck Norris in a real fight between Lee and Ali. Probably. Right on. Christy, Wander Franco did not work out. Robert Scott, flipping can be an avenue to fund the PC, as just said. Santucci picked up a judge in Ohio for $1. Nice buy right there. Chris C, I bought some Kobe during the peak for my PC, but I never had an intention of selling. The hyped guys, I will sell. That's a smart way to do it. Oh, Foul Ball has renamed himself. Thank you, Jeremy, for clarifying. And Yankees fan says, hello, everybody. So happy the NFL is rolling. Time to buy some football. All right. Thank you, Yankees fan, for being here. Ham, we're going to bring out Mr. Leighton Sheldon of Just Collect. Leighton, I feel like it's been a while since we've had the opportunity to have you on for a Vintage Spotlight segment. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you having me on tonight.
Of course. You are more than welcome. Always good to have you. Michael Hamm, have you met Leighton before?
Not in person. I've been in some breaks through Leighton company and stuff, but until now, this is, hey, how you doing, buddy? I did see him walking around the show, but I'm not one to just walk up to people and say, hey, I know you. That's just not how I am.
Right on. Well, listen, Leighton, you might be on a bit of a sound delay here, so I'm going to go right to Michael Hamm, and I'm going to ask him to present you with a question that he has for you. I always ask our guest, our main guest, our featured guest tonight, Mr. Michael Hamm, to come with a vintage-themed question for Leighton for the Vintage Spotlight segment. And by the way, guys, we also, Leighton and I, have a spin-off podcast called The Vintage Spotlight. We have 3 episodes out there on the Vintage Spotlight YouTube channel and podcast, and we are going to be recording episode number 4, I believe, this coming week. Aren't we, Leighton? Over to you, Michael Hamm. Throw your question at Leighton.
All right, Leighton. With cards 20 years or older being considered vintage, what do you consider to be the newest years of vintage cards, and what cards or players would you target from that era?
Well, there's a lot in there, Michael. So I'll try
I know.
to do the best I can.
Hey, when you swing for the fences.
Sure. Listen, I do the same. So, first, kind of what Jeremy was saying about, budget and such. Michael, I think it depends on how old you are. So for me, because I think Jeremy had emailed me this question this afternoon. I considered it for a couple minutes. And, for me, I grew up in an era where the 80s were super important. I mean, I collected them. And if you fast forward now, what is that, 35, 45 years, whatever the case is, depending on where it was in the 80s. I know from collecting that there truly is, even though they're vintage, there's actually a reason to get those key rookies graded because they're really hard to get, not in 6 or 7 or even 8. But if you want a 9, even on a 1983 Topps 20 Gwen rookie, that's not the easiest card. Forget about 10s, because 10s, of course, are very hard. But 9s and some key rookies from the 80s are really difficult. So that's kind of what I think about being as like the new vintage. And then if you had to say to me to jump forward, and I feel like it's already happening with prices, is some key issues from the 90s. So whether it be like the Donruss Elite cards or refractors from Finest, things like that really kind of laid the groundwork for the rest of the 90s and then the 2000s and ultimately today. Technically right as vintage because it's over 25 years ago. And, obviously everyone's definition is different, but I think that they're important. So I think it's not, Michael, just about is it vintage, but where does it fall in terms of its importance as far as to collectors, to hobbyists, investors, etc., but really to the pure hobbyist. And I think to the pure hobbyist who grew up in the 80s, we care about having an 84 Donruss Donnie baseball rookie and a PSA 9. Like that card wasn't the easiest to find in focus and centered. Forget about a 10, which is like thousands of dollars now.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to keep it real for the average collector. So that's kind of my, my quick answer. What do you think, Mike?
I think we need to figure out what the term vintage means and start putting a cap on it and then give a new name to something else. I know we have vintage, modern, and then ultra modern. And I don't know if it comes ultra modern after that, or we come up with a new fancy name that the kids come up with. But I think right now, because again, the time we grew up is now old, unfortunately. But from what we know as vintage, it's even way older. So it's like, where's the cutoffs? Really, I know what the term means, but I think for the hobby, I think we need a better direction, especially for people now growing up in the hobby, looking back on it. Because I think those segments of time, something changed in the hobby that caused something different to come out of it. And vintage to me, it's just like when people would put their cards in their bike spokes and pin them up against the wall and, put holes in them and draw on them. We weren't doing that in the 80s. Even some of the late 70s, we weren't doing that. So I just feel like I just wish there were more terms. I know at some point I saw a thread that somebody did a really good job with terms. And I was like, that'd be a good thing to adopt in the future so that we have a really good depiction of what era of cards really falls within a bracket.
Well, I'm just going to throw it out there because I feel, it's fun to be the contrarian sometimes. Why is it so important? In other words, you made a couple points as to why it's important, but I'll just throw out there, but like, if you go into any other category, like wine, some people consider vintage wine to be from the 20s. Other people consider a nice vintage bottle to be from the 60s. And I don't know that one is right or wrong. So to me, I just don't want to pigeonhole something that doesn't need to be kind of wrapped up in a nice, like neat little bow. I'm not vehemently against it. And I understand what you're saying because I think education is important. But if someone's coming in the hobby, they know nothing about it, but they have some money. They come in with some sort of financial background. I don't know if we have some sort of like nice, neat definitions for vintage that all of a sudden they're going to go from spending $5,000 to $500,000. I think it's really about educating people within the different nuances of the hobby. Because let's be real, right? There's some PMGs from the 90s that sell for more in a 5 than a Tony Gwen rookie does in a 10. Yeah. And I'm not saying that one is right or wrong. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just not sure that by defining them better, that's actually going to do anything for anyone of consequence. But that's just my hot take.
Yeah.
I really like that hot take, Leighton, because that's one I've never heard before. It's like, does it even matter? And it matters because we need to communicate with each other, and we need, you want to explain what you collect. And so I think it sort of matters for that reason, but I also agree with what you're saying. And one of the issues I think is that the dictionary definition of vintage doesn't seem to apply to sports cards. So then you think about, well, comic books, they divide it up into eras. And I think that is a great way to apply. That's a great sort of structure to apply to sports cards. They got the golden age, the silver age, whatever other ages they have. Because in our hobby, to me, vintage is up until Upper Deck came in. And I know I'm in the minority there. A lot of people say, no, the vintage ended after Donruss and Fleer came in. And other people say, no, vintage ended after 1971 or whatever early 70s year it is. So there's, like Michael said, there's no agreement as to when vintage ends and when it starts, but the textbook definition is something like 20 years. Doesn't apply. No one's going to say that vintage is the year our cards from 2002 at this point. So I think if we are ever going to have a consensus agreement on defining the times when cards were produced, I think you got to go into eras and labeling them. And maybe the word vintage goes away. I don't know, but I think that's an approach that could work. What do you think, Ham?
It was technically, some of those early cards are technically not considered antique. So if you want to go by terms, those are antique cards. So, and you're probably looking at, the 20s and backwards, because I think 100 years is considered antique now.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
So again, up to 1923 or 4 now, that's an antique card. But we like to call that like pre-war. So, I mean, you see what I'm saying? We have terms. We just are missing terms for what's coming up now with the stuff that we all grew up with that we feel like was, not so far ago. And it doesn't feel like it's that long ago.
What happens to ultra modern, like cards from 2023 and 24, 5 years from now? Those aren't ultra modern. They're going to make their way through, but they'll never be considered fit. Then they're going to have a hard stop at whatever it is before you get to vintage, so.
Listen, this
40
is
years
all
from now,
really...
it'll be called ultra vintage.
ultra vintage, or like some sort of crazy variations.
Far enough future, it's probably all digital cards anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Mike, I really appreciate some of your points that you made about, the definition of an antique being 100 years old. And I was just kind of thinking about this kind of top of mind here for a second. What about, because I agree with you, Jeremy, as well, the whole point of this is to try to have some transparency, and people can actually understand all different levels. So maybe when you get to, like, people think of 50s and 60s already as vintage. So maybe when we get to the 70s, where there's some sort of argument, if you will, is it truly vintage? Is it not? It would be nice to say, all right, here's the decade of the 70s, and maybe a sentence or two about how it's defined. So in other words, production was highest in baseball. The other sports, the other major sports, meaning basketball, football, hockey, were minuscule compared to baseball. And even though the cards today are not hard to find, in high grade of 9 or higher, they're very difficult to find.
Very difficult, yeah.
And certain cards can be difficult to find in 8 or higher. And what I'm saying is you could truncate that down to like 2 or 3 sentences, and now all of a sudden you could do the same thing for the 80s, for the 90s, for the 2000s. I feel like a radio station, and the hits of today.
Yeah.
So thanks for laughing. But the joking aside, I think you guys are all suggesting like really good stuff about to define it better, but I'm just not sure we could do it with like 2 words or 3 words.
Yeah.
And I think that it's an interesting topic to discuss.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It's interesting.
I agree. I think it is a fun conversation. We got some comments coming in about this, so let's see what the chat has to say. First of all, Lou Rock TV in the house. What's up, Lou Rock? Good to see you, buddy. Rock. Welcome to the show. Check out the Lou Rock TV YouTube channel, everybody. Michael Stone, interested to hear your thoughts on this one. I have an 83 Donruss, Tony Gwynn, PSA 10. Should I sell that and pick up 8 to 10 good rookies in 9s? That's an interesting. What do you think of that, Leighton?
I think that in general, quality is the best. In other words, I'd rather have one really good card than 10. But I would say I'm also a collector. And so oftentimes it's kind of like lost in the mix. For me, I love the 80s. So if you said to me, listen, I love the 83 Donruss Tony Gwynn rookie, but I've had that card in a 9. I probably still do now because I love that set. And that card can look just as good as a 10. So if you said to me, I get to fulfill my wishes and have 10 really cool and key cards from the 1980s in the grade of 8 or 9. I don't know. That seems to be very reasonable to me.
I don't want to know the pop count, because if it's like a pop 55 or 60, I'm like,
so what I would do is I'd want to look at that PSA 10 and decide, is this a real 10 or was this a 9 last time it was graded? And I would want to make sure I love it as that it's like as advertised. And if not, I'd probably just be happy with a 9, because it maybe was a 9 at one point in time. Jacob Gaudreau says contemporary would best describe current cards. It's a great word. Lantern says, hey, what's up, Lantern? Better late than never. Skeppy says the 80s is already beyond vintage. Dan, the card man, says Ham is the goat. That is a goat.
Yeah.
Ham is the
It's
goat.
a goat. It's not a schnauzer. It's a goat.
Yeah, it's not a schnauzer.
Thanks, Dan.
welcome to the show, Dan. Mark Santucci says, like supplies came around and now you can have 1083 Gwyn's. Jay Giuliano, vintage is what is older than you. Jacob doesn't like wine people. He just says they're dumb. Straight to the point right there. Skeppy says in the 80s, when a card from the 60s was vintage, what happened was the internet. It created a 2-decade plus delay. Interesting outlook. Brendan Ryan says an ERA scale an era scale isn't a bad idea. Clearly defined vintage could ease confusion among new collectors. And that's also why I think it's important. Mark Santucci says Beckett has the vintage guide in the 84 Tigers on it a few months ago. Triple V says baseball does have nuanced timelines. The Guiled era, the dead ball era. Yeah, so we're talking the eras of the sport versus the hobby there. I don't know that crosses.
I don't think that would cross hard enough.
Jacob Thiessen, pre-80s is vintage, then junk wax up until 95-ish, then modern up until 19, and then 2020 to current is the junk slab era. I mean, that fits somewhat. I could pick holes in it, but I think it fits. Dan says comic books have a strict guideline of eras. I think we see that applied eventually to cards, and I think so. I think we see it applied eventually as the hobby continues to grow up. And all I mean is evolve and become more mainstream. Orlando agrees pre-80s is vintage. He says we have pre-war. We do. Jacob Thiessen says in 2100 the current cards will be considered vintage. But will we call them that, Jacob Thiessen? Will we, even in 2100 when I'm gone, we actually call them that?
They will be antique, and at that point you'll probably have your brain in a robot, Jeremy. So you'll still be here.
It doesn't even matter. Exactly. Chris says, how is it in the late 80s, 60s were vintage, but in 84, Topps now 40 years later isn't? Sorry, but it is definitely skewed. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Mookie Chilson says the effective labeling of eras and categories is useful for collectors to organize and consumers to understand and buy. If you can name it, you can sell it. I agree with that comment. For sure. Makes good sense to me. Vintage says 90s should be called the creative era. That's what I refer to as the second half of the 90s as the creative. The first half is still junk wax, for me at least. Bob Boozle says, I collect cards from the Sports Cards Live era. I didn't know we had an era, Bob Boozle, but thank you very much. Will Bennett says, when I think of vintage hockey, I think of Super Mario, Mario Lemieux, and back. But what about Patrick Waugh the year after? See, I don't know. How do you, that's a sort of, to me, an arbitrary line, Will, but I appreciate your thoughts and good to see you, Will. Chris says the 90s were creative indeed. Yes, Michael Stone, Pop on the Gwyn is 950. Dan the Card Man says we'd be lucky for physical cards to still exist in 2100. And Jacob Gaudreau says
paper won't exist.
Art has all the terms laid out. We might be in postmodern currently. Yeah, maybe we are. Good stuff, guys. Good question, Ham. That was a fun one. Leighton, am I going to see you at the Philly show the weekend after next, I believe?
Oh yeah, that's a staple for our company, Just Collect. We're real excited to be down there, and I'll have my son with me as well.
Oh, good stuff. I get to see Crosby again twice in one season. How cool is that? Michael Hamm,
there's not that many guys I deal with that are taller than me, Jeremy, and so you're one of them.
Michael Hamm, have you ever been to the Philly show?
Nope.
I
haven't been to Philly. I haven't been to the Philly show yet. I haven't been to Dallas. 2 shows I do want to go to. It's just trying to stretch all the time out to always go somewhere. And with the way my work is, where it's a 24/7 type of attention job, it's always hard for me. I mean, like right now I'm in the middle of hurricane season, so every day it's just nothing but what's coming. I got to be 15 to 20 days out on that. So
got it. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to go for the first time. I've heard about the Philly show. I've been told is the longest continually running card show in North America, which is pretty phenomenal. And I believe it's also got a lot of vintage, which I'm very excited about. I'm maybe I'll pick up a card. Maybe I won't. We'll see if I can get her done. But I'm excited to hunt for a couple of specific cards while I'm down there. So I'm looking forward to it. Leighton, you excited for the show? Is that your next show, Philly?
Yeah, it's a couple of weeks. That'll be the next convention that I'll be attending, as well as exhibiting at. How about for yourself, Mike? What's the next show that you think you're going to end up going to?
My next big show is going to be the Fanatics event in Orlando.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Right on. Leighton, anything you'd like to? Oh, before I ask you that, guys, check out Leighton's podcast, Trading Card Therapy, and again, the Vintage Spotlight podcast is a spinoff of this show. Please check that out on YouTube and your podcast platforms. Leighton, anything you'd like to mention before we wrap this up?
Well, I'm going to leave this with you guys to discuss, and I'll tune in to see what you guys, feel about it. But, our buddy Cage, he has his own podcast, like The Hobby with Cage or something. And so he was talking about an experience that he had recently at the East Coast National. And I didn't have a chance to go because I was at Fanatics Fest in NYC. And so, long story short, a really young kid that Cage was there with his son. They started to kind of chat, and the kid was talking about flipping cards, paying 10, selling for 15. Really kind of cool stuff, right? I hope that, my son does that one day. My son's 9. So anyway, fast forward, the kid did some sort of trade, and he did it with a dealer. And as part of this trade, he, I guess, traded some Donald Trump Kaboom cards, which I have a hard time saying with a straight face, because I think that most of us would know that they don't actually exist. So if they are out there, they're kind of like unlicensed kind of thing, almost like a souvenir kind of card, if you will. So anyway, apparently the dealer, I don't know exactly at what point, but he did the deal, this $40 trade. And at some point after, got really upset. Who knows why? And the reason he got upset is because he was traded these unlicensed cards and claims he didn't know. So fast forward, Cage is telling the story on his podcast, and he's saying that this dealer got really upset at this young kid, and he made the kid cry. And then all of a sudden, everyone kind of stopped at the convention to see what's going on. This is my question I want you guys to discuss amongst yourselves. I'd love to hear your thoughts and from your community as well. I think we may have reached a point where at these conventions, even though there's someone who's running the convention, maybe there should be, and I know there's been talks of this before, but I haven't heard it in a while. There should be some sort of dealer association. So I'm not talking about anything else that's going to be, for profit, but it's going to be, maybe an annual election, every 2-year election. But so that way, if there's some knucklehead who makes a kid cry at a show, even if he's in the right, if you find out that it was for this $40 absurd thing, you know what? Maybe if you were in this group, you get a warning. And on your second warning, you're no longer part of it. And what would that do for the community? I think it would do a few things. Number one, if you're going up there as a mother, as a father, with your 10, 12, or 14-year-old kid at a show, maybe you'd like to see a seal of approval on someone's booth, that they're part of some sort of better association that is looking out for the hobby. And then, it kind of just trickles down from there. And the only dues that would be paid would really just be covered the administration. I'd be curious, Jeremy, Mike, what you guys think, and of course, what the community thinks. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Thanks, Leighton. See you in a couple weeks.
Nice meeting you.
Not sooner. I'll see you on Monday, actually. All right. It's funny, Ham, because we have a bullet point in our agenda tonight to talk about, and this was something you came up with, and the way my notes read is, can we create a board of the hobby to communicate and interact with the companies? I think that board could also fulfill the duties that Leighton just mentioned, which is
if you have a big enough
almost.
Yeah, sorry about that. If you have a board that's big enough, because obviously things are coast to coast, everybody can't be everywhere. So, I mean, the majority of board meetings are probably going to be a Zoom meeting or something like that. But it's to discuss things like this. What can we do to be more inviting? Because the whole point of growing this hobby, I know what Ruben 10X, he never said what 10X really was. He said he just shot for the moon, basically. We can 10X the hobby when it comes down to more people being involved in the hobby. But it has to be friendly enough. You can't have people going in and getting into things and losing a bunch of money or getting scammed or having your kids cry. I have a different take with kids today, because I think you have two versions of kids in the hobby right now. You have the young one that the parents are buying stuff for. Nobody knows what the heck they're doing. Then you have the other kids walking around with $100,000 worth of cards in their case, and they're basically running around like car salesmen, flipping, dealing, trying to hustle you, and it's just like, I don't know how to take this right now, because each person I got to take very individually and direct. And then, I sit there and watch kids do trades all the time. And unfortunately, some of them are lying now. Oh, this sold for this comp, blah, blah, blah. And they look it up and like, no, it didn't. And they'll have a screenshot on their phone, but it's not a live thing. So it's like, you got to really watch out right now, because even the kids can be just as bad as the adults. And you try to be nice to the kids and give them a fair deal a lot of times. And again, this guy with the $40, it's $40, guy. I mean, first of all, you should know that it's an unlicensed card if you're a dealer, or if you're buying a card and you're an adult. Come on now. All right. That's the first thing I would ask. Like, where is this person's mind at? Doesn't make sense. And after that, you bought, what I think he said, 2 cards, $20 each. Come on. That's the one blaster anyway. Right. I mean, to make a kid's day, I'd rather give them the $40, take the 2 cards and make them feel good, to be honest with you. That's where we need to be in the hobby.
I hear you. Make a sacrifice for the kid, so you don't chase this kid out of the hobby and also ruin his day, and who knows what other impact you have on his psychology. But we do have a comment down here from Foul Ball, says kids are so sensitive nowadays, and he's not wrong. I mean, well, I shouldn't say it because I don't want to generalize, but many
no. I mean, we both have young kids. We
right? Yeah,
that's the other future. We're already dealing with the other one ahead of them. So
right. Exactly. All right, I want to pick up on some comments even from when Leighton was back on. So Robert Scott said vintage is the gum era, and that to me really makes sense, because I like to see a monument before I'm going to change the name of an era. I want to see something monumentally change. And, the end of gum was big.
Because we have the tobacco cards. So that could be the tobacco era.
Tobacco era. The tobacco and candy era, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be PC about it, I guess. But yeah. And then gum era.
Yeah. Dylan says everything that came out before my dad was
antique.
My age is vintage. Exactly. That's a good one for sure. Mike Stone says, I would love to find some of those cards in SGC 9.5, so undervalued. Colin Murray says there's no hockey in Philly, to which Colin, I'm sure you mean there's very little, because I got a guy on Twitter /X here, John Iafala at Detroit Sports 39. He's always talking about setting up with hockey in Philly. So I know there is some hockey in Philly. And luckily, I mentioned earlier, I'm looking for a couple of vintage cards, neither of which are hockey. I'm looking for some baseball right now. So I hope I find some hockey too. But anyway, we'll see. And I know I will, because John Iafala is going to be there with some hockey. But Mark Santucci says, Colin, there will be hockey, not as much as Toronto, of course not, but there will be some hockey. Dan the Cardman says, imagine making a kid cry over losing $40. Yeah, this is what you were just saying, Ham. Exactly. He goes on to say, I'm an auditor, would love to see a dealers association. Yep. I mean, I was an auditor as well. And I would also like to see what Leighton put it well when he said seal of approval, or some sort of certification that you are adhering to some standards, some integrity type of things. Now, it's going to be hard to enforce, but I think it's worth a try nonetheless. Chris says, yeah, it's ridiculous making any kid cry. Orlando suggested a kid-friendly dealer award. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
B Pencil nominates Bob Boozle to lead this new association, but Bob replies and says his wife won't let him lead the hobby. That's a travesty that your wife won't let you lead the hobby, Bob Boozle.
At least he didn't say my wife won't let me leave the house.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Vintage says the hobby needs to call out the dealers that act like that. And for the most part, the hobby calls out a lot of these issues. So I think, that happens. That does happen quite a bit. Jay Giuliano says, how about let's not have a kid cry when collecting, except when they lose, because fourth place trophies are worthless. Mark Santucci, I'm speechless. A board. That's why we have security. I don't think you understand what the board would do, Mark, because it's completely different than security. So, but maybe by now we've been talking through it a bit more. You've picked up on, I think, what the real intention of that would be. Michael Stone says, not just kids. People are way too sensitive these days. Yeah, agreed by Triple V. love that. Brendan Ryan, got to start with the lobby card era. Oh, that's from hotel lobby to the trade night era, maybe that kind of thing, right? Rob Sonier says, all my cards are PC until someone gives me the price I want for it. That's an interesting point there because, Ham, I'll tell you, I've got cards that are locked away in my PC. But if someone offers me stupid money for it, like, I'm kind of obligated to take it. Like, if I have a card that, I'm into for $5,000 and someone offers me $25,000 for it.
A lot of people did that during the pandemic when everything went ballistic. There were people that are like, there's just no way that this should be worth this. And they were right. If you got out at that time and you did very well because you were already holding nice stuff, that was the best time. Maybe we see a time like that again. I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime, but that was a very special time. And you can't go back and compare prices. Like I always see dealers, they're like, oh, that was in, mid 2021. I can't look at that number. It doesn't exist. That wasn't a real number anymore.
Here's an interesting comment from Philly Joe. He says, if people are considered legally to be minors, they shouldn't be trading and selling, to which I push back a bit. I'm not set on anything, but like, I know to vote, you have to be a certain age. To drink, you have to be a certain age. But I've heard of entrepreneurs as young as 8 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old. Why can't minors do business? I don't know of any law. So I push back on Philly Joe, not push back, but I ask why, Philly Joe, why, if people are considered legally to be minors, why shouldn't they be able to trade and sell and this is going to be a little bit more sensitive, but even without parental supervision, why should they not be able to do that? Is it because adults are going to take advantage of them? I mean, that makes sense to me.
I think that would be the biggest window there. The only other thing would be how much money they're moving, just because the government only allows a child to make up to so much money in a given year. If not, it does have to be parentally consented. That's why, like, the Ryan kid on YouTube that makes millions of dollars, his parents have to accept that money. It's too much. A child, I think, under the age of 15 can only make like $12,500 a year. So I know people that have their own company that pay their kid for doing nothing, basically, because you can. But there's a cap on it. But again, most kids probably aren't moving $12,500, but some actually are. So technically, it would need to go through their parents if it's a transactional deal. But almost all the kids, if you notice, they don't have Venmo, they don't have PayPal. They're operating straight cash. Parents have upfronted the money for breaks or whatever, and then they're running around with these cards.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I don't know the answer. So the only reason I say push back is because I want to know why. Why can't they? But Philly Joe says base contract law was just a thought. So I don't know. I took a couple law courses, but I don't remember the details, so I can't really speak back to that. But good conversation nonetheless, Philly Joe. Appreciate the comments for sure. Colin Murray says no buyers of hockey at the Philly show. He did it last September. Was not good for a hockey dealer. Too bad. Yeah, that's and I mean, I know Colin Murray's inventory's got some of the best vintage inventory at any show. Check out Hockey Card Exchange, guys, if you're into vintage hockey. Some jokes about Bob Boozle. I love it. Mark says 18 to vote, 21 to drink in the US, 18 in France, 16 in Italy. Thank you for the information. Brendan Ryan says, do minors have to pay taxes on big deals? There's no exclusion on paying taxes based on age. It's based on, Yeah, it comes down to that same IRS law that I was talking about, basically. And I just know about that because I've seen a couple of videos recently regarding it. Just had nothing to do with cards, but they were just talking about, hey, if you own your own business, you can actually pay your child X amount of dollars up to this point. Right. So that would be the amount of income they're allowed to have per year as being a kid before it becomes a parental. I have a feeling that there's you're actually talking about two different things there. One being, the maximum that a parent can deduct for paying their kid to sweep the floors, sort of thing, versus I don't think there's any maximum that a kid can report on their own personal income tax return. I can't see there being, because not all kids have, parents. I've never seen a kid with a tax return though. So that's why I'm saying it becomes a certain amount. It's going to go to the parent. They're going to the guardian has to accept it. or at least have signing authority on the bank account, something
Correct.
like that.
Correct.
Neither of us are experts in this. I'm sure there's people listening
Don't
and
listen to what we
watching
say.
who are like laughing at us right now, but you guys know what you're talking about. So let's just stop that right there.
Hey, don't worry, we're on the board. We're making this up as we go.
Right. Yeah, we're writing the rules right now. Exactly. Stukes makes a very good comment. Some of the miners know more than the dealers about the cards. Very true. I mean, we see that all the time for sure. Michael Stone wants to know why you're not drinking any old fashions right now, Michael Hamm.
Because I'm tailgating tomorrow at the Bucks game for a couple hours prior to the 4 o'clock game, and I figured I was going to take it easy tonight.
So another item I had on our notes for tonight was lack of communication with the hobby. And I think and this was one of the topics that you find interesting. And I think your angle is sort of, there's a lack of communication between the big companies in the hobby and the hobby itself, the hobbyists, the collectors, the investors, the flippers, the people buying the cards. Can you sort of just expound upon that a little bit and let us know what your concerns are?
Well, first of all, we always have the concerns on print runs on cards. That's the first thing right there. Is it doesn't matter. We're just trying to gauge where it needs to fall in the pecking order of value on our end. They're basically leaving it up to us to try and figure this out. When in the past, it wasn't that hard. You could do it. Topps doesn't even put the odds on the packs anymore. And it's not necessarily because they don't want to show them to you, because you can go to the website and look at them, but because there's so many different parallels now that even both flaps of the back of the pack wouldn't be able to handle all the data. Right. You know what I mean? So it's
QR codes now. You need QR codes on there.
That would be a fantastic thing. I think everything needs QR codes. I always get really surprised, even when I'm at a show and they're like, hey, where's your PayPal? And I got to go find a card behind the table. I'm like, how do you not have a sticker on your table that I can just scan to pay you by your preferred method that's not cash? Right. So easy. I accept these payments. It's on your glass. But the transparency between the companies, even the bigger companies that come through there, we don't know the stacked pecking order of licenses for the most part. Obviously, if Fanatics bought some, we know when those are going to happen because of how big it was. But I reached out to Topps recently about their digital license for Marvel because they have the digital license for Marvel. And I play the Topps Marvel app game that I like to collect the cards on there. And they're like, we can't tell you that. I'm like, well, can I go look it up somewhere? Nope. I'm like, what? Why is that a secret? Because if Fanatics wants it, they're going to find out, and they're going to buy it from you anyway. I'm just trying to figure out how long I have this thing for, because in the past, Topps is owned by Fanatics now, so it's not a big deal. But so, for instance, with the digital apps, they've owned them. They lost the licenses, so they've created an archive that you can no longer buy or trade your cards with the other users, and they put it in an archive where you can still go look at your cards. But they've never reopened one of those that they've ever taken down, which I find weird because Topps is now going to have the license for football. Well, bring back the football. They're going to have the license for wrestling, so bring back the wrestling. Like, they've just never brought anything back. But it's like transparency. So it'd be nice to be able to ask somebody that's not just basic customer service about things and get real honest answers. And it's just like when I see stuff like that, and you even ask a bigger company about something, and they're kind of like not telling you the truth, like, you know, they're not telling you the truth. And like, what would be the perfect example? And I don't want to throw a company under the bus. I asked a specific rating company, a guy that's local here, about something that was going on about notifying people about when they're going to show up and set up at a show. Because I'd be like, hey, I just noticed so-and-so was at this show. How come you didn't, A, the show didn't promote it, and B, you didn't promote it that you were going to be at that show? And then he's like, listen, I can't, we've said this to our bosses. This was at the National, and he's like, go over there and talk to him. So I go over there, hey, I'm Mike, blah, blah, blah. You know, I was curious, so why don't you? Oh, no, we do tons of advertising. We put it all on our website, all this other stuff. It was all lying to me. He's just lying to my face because the guy that worked for you even told me that this was a problem. Yeah. So it's like, and they only have so much power as well. That's the other thing we don't realize is some of these people that we can be close with in the hobby aren't the next level guys that are more corporate or business sensed people, I guess, is the best way to put it. And it doesn't trickle down. Like, for some reason, they're hiding something. I don't know why they're hiding. If it's competitors.
Well, I'm listening to you speak, and I'm sort of thinking in my own mind that, okay, so we've got this veil of secrecy that clouds all the manufacturers for the most part. They have their trade secrets, and why do they? Well, one reason is there's information they don't want us to know because they feel that if we knew it, we the hobby, that we might spend less money with them. So, and they are all for profit. So that's one potential reason. There's secret. There are secrets. The other one, and I think you just mentioned it, is trade secrets. They don't necessarily want to let the competitors know the exact day they're going to release a product or whatever it may be, because they don't want the competitor to, oh, well, we're going to now push ours out to come out on the 16th since they're coming out on the 17th, sort of thing. And whatever other reasons there are around certain trade secrets or other protecting their intel, if you will. So, but again, I'm speculating. I don't know for sure. I think we have a good one sec, because we have a really good comment here from Bob. It's from Bob Boozle right here. He agrees with you. He says it would help if Topps used the National or Fanatics Fest to unveil a roadmap like Marvel does with its movies at Comic-Con. And I remember at the Mint Collective, I sat in on a Topps panel discussion, and I think it was Clay from Topps. He delivered that roadmap. It was actually when they announced, I think they announced the debut patch at the Mint Collective there a couple years ago. And that was great. So they're willing to do it. Maybe there just needs to be more coordination with the people running the National or Fanatics Fest or whatever show to accommodate this. Because I agree with Bob. I agree with what you're saying. How do you respond to that?
Again, the Mint isn't something that everybody's going to go to begin with, or be able to go to.
But the content can be reported on and
disseminated. Correct. But they like to use the Mint where the other people they did invite, their content people that are on the internet, to share that usually, unless they tell them not to. But usually they're fine with sharing it. The thing with like the trade secrets or timing or much anymore, again, Fanatics at this point is just about owning everything. And we're at the point now, because of the way breaking is and product just has to be had one way or another. It doesn't matter if you tell me when it's coming out, or I just want to know. It's just more of the fact that why are you making us try and figure it out? Somebody's going to buy the product no matter what. We buy everything now. It doesn't even matter. Because of breaking, that's why cost is so high for everything that comes out. The way Fanatics now does their sales through the people that they give product to. And I don't know if you know how this works. So they'll have the first release of a product. And then when the product comes out again, whatever fair market value is, that's their new price on that product they held back, that the stores have to buy, even if they have to take a small loss. That's not good business. Not where you're trying to keep the business afloat too. You can't give them something they can't make a return on, or they're making $10 on. That's not proper business at the next level. If you want to be that go through from the front end and cut something out, but you got to give them some wiggle room. I don't know if it's sustainable.
I hear you, man. I mean, when LCSs need to load up on low, it's not low end product, but
undesired. Just go undesired. Just or less desired. Yeah.
Unsellable. When you have to load up on the unsellable just so you can get the good product at the end of the season, so you get the allocation for it. I mean, God, it just goes against everything that I would want as a business owner. I think the LCS business is, I mean, these guys they have it tough that they have to eat up all this garbage.
And now they have rules.
Right. But at the same time, I do understand it from the manufacturer or the distributor's perspective. Otherwise, they're going to get stuck with it. So then I think to myself, well, don't produce in the first place, but they have to, because they have to bring in money to pay the royalties to the leagues and associations. So then I think, well, maybe they should do it made to order. But then now we're going direct to consumer, and we eliminate the heart of the hobby. So that's not a good result either.
Well, I don't know. They're doing a good job with Topps now. I mean, where they sell over 500,000 of those Olympic cards for everybody to chase realistically one card.
Yeah.
One card, everybody and their mother.
That's a lotto. That's a lotto for sure. And now someone asked, I saw an Instagram poll maybe today or yesterday about, like, would you, if you pulled it, would you sell it to Giannis for $1 million? And I wrote back, heck yeah, I'd sell it to Giannis. I'd sell it to Giannis. Next thing I know, he's my kid's godfather. I mean, of course I'm going to sell it to Giannis.
There better be some other stipulations to the family at that point. Like,
exactly.
I need some game shoes, a uniform. You got to wave to me.
Exactly. B Pencil says, as long as kids conduct business ethically, then I don't see an issue. It helps them get experience in negotiating, communicating in person, and money management. I say preach to that. I think that's exactly right. I've seen so many kids grow up in the hobby. Now they're in their late 20s. I like literally people that I've known from going and setting up at the Toronto Expo now for closing in on 20 years here. And I've seen kids go from being 8 years old to their mid to late 20s, and they're adults, and they're better at life because they grew up in the hobby, negotiating with adults, developing confidence, dealing with people that are three times their age, if not
negotiating
more.
Too. I mean,
exactly.
They don't teach any of that in school.
No,
at all.
This is street education, the hobby law. And you're going to take that kid who took who had to cry over the $40 card. Maybe that ends up being, a blessing in disguise, a great lesson. Thank you, Edward Cottle, for the comment. Enjoying the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Will Bennett says getting help or information from the Topps digital teams is like pulling teeth from an alligator.
It is not want to. So bad. I swear to God, it's two people that run all the apps and they just can't deal with it.
Ray, welcome to the show, Ray. Joe Perot, my guy in Santa Cruz, says, fun show. Ham is eminently reasonable and cool to hang out with. I'm curious about how he experienced Tom Brady becoming a Tampa Bay Buccaneer and what the historic season was like as a Bucs fan. Hit it.
Oh, I mean, literally, it's like a fairy tale. I mean, it's the guy that everybody pretty much wants to come to their team. He chooses to come here. He gets to change his persona and be who he wants to be finally, because he was handcuffed before. So we got the fun Tom Brady. We had tequila Tom Brady. Okay. And he was fun. Gronk was here. I mean, the team, it's one of those things that it just comes together and everybody's having a good time. And that just also shows on the field that everybody's working together. I mean, we had Antonio Brown, who obviously is a little bit of a basket case, but damn, he's a good player. So, but he lost it at the end there because if he would have stayed on the team, we would have won another Super Bowl. I'll tell you that right now. But no, it's just fairy tale. It's kind of like that. If you could go buy a Super Bowl, what do you need? You need that guy, and he's going to bring in a couple more guys and pump everybody up. And that's what he did. I mean, he lived up to that hype at an older age. So it's just like, wow. I mean, you come in here and just fire.
Must have been amazing, man. I mean, it's
fantastic.
like Wayne Gretzky going to play for the Rangers for a few years. Michael Jordan for the Wizards. Imagine that, right? Like being a lifelong Wizards fan. Michael Stone says, not only do the dealers have to buy undesirable product, there is a price they are not allowed to go below, at least for a certain amount of time. I think they can kind of, and I ask, can they blow it out eventually? I mean, otherwise it's just taking up warehouse space. You don't have room for anything else.
Yeah. I mean, the guy down the street from me, he'll show me the thing. He's like, look, I got to sell this for $10 less than what I bought it for. Cause I can't move it.
Skeppy says, what are the top 2 negotiation skills? I mean, to me, 2 things come to mind. The ability to listen to what your counterpart actually wants and needs. So being an active listener, and then you have to be able to communicate. I mean, listening and communication. I don't know if listening is part of communication. It probably is, but that would be my answer, Skeppy. The ability to listen, the ability
knowledge on what you're attempting to negotiate on. That's
subject matter expertise as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if you can't talk to somebody and you don't know about it, you're in the headlight. Look.
Gary Keith says, how much of the gouging is by the producers, so the card companies, and how much is the wholesalers? Who is more to blame? This is a great. I don't know.
I'll tell you, it's the producers. Right now, it's the producers.
Yeah,
because we know right now a hobby box to select is not $900 from Panini. I'm sorry, I know what that box is got in it. I know what it costs to probably make it, and absolutely not. The thousands of % that is being upcharged is ridiculous. And I know that people pay for licenses and all this other stuff. I would like to see it one day, somehow somebody come out and break it down and show me, because I already know they're making money hand over fist. It's not even funny. They really are. It just matters their overhead on the other stuff. Because Ruben is the first person to really bring in the other stuff, the marketing and all the other things that go along with it. So prior to this, Panini's just been literally printing money, like hard printing money.
For sure. Now, what about we've got like the big dogs in the hobby, Mr. Ham, and then we've got, it's like in grading. You got PSA with SGC now. What, 93% of the pie, and then you got everybody else clamoring for a little bit of the market share. In sports cards, we got Fanatics, which has all the licenses outside from hockey, which is Upper Deck. And then you got companies like Leaf and some other, and even Upper Deck maybe, that are, at least, well, Upper Deck's got the hockey license, and DC, Marvel, I think, whatever else.
They have DC now. There's the rumors they're losing Marvel.
Rumor is they're losing Marvel, but they have, so DC hockey, which is, their bread and butter, I believe. But then you got some other companies in the space. And I know that you have some interest in what's going on there. Like, what position do you feel some of these small competitors are in? Do they have a chance to take some market share, or is Fanatics and PSA, and from a marketplace perspective, obviously eBay's huge. You got Fanatics Collect now, you got ComC, you've got some others, but what are your thoughts on some of these smaller competitors and their ability to be successful?
As long as they're being innovation, if they're creating innovation or putting out a valuable, good product, people are going to buy it. I mean, we buy everything at this point, because the guy that, when we go back to the pandemic, people that were buying sports cards were also buying Pokemon. People that were buying Pokemon were also buying sports cards. That also made people more aware of both sides. We're now in a point of the hobby where anything that's assumed value, eyes will go to, people will drive to, and it doesn't matter if it's the first, second, or third level. When you're dealing with cards and stuff like Gas, for instance, that trading card company, or what Leaf and Wild Card do, I want somebody to challenge the license personally. I want to see what happens when you do it. Again, I that case in '95, I believe, whether it was Pacific or whatever, they literally threw it out because they were going to lose. So you can just bring that case right back up. Listen, I took a picture of this player in their work uniform. I can't tell them to go out there in a suit and tie and hit a baseball. I just can't use the word Yankees and say it's licensed. I want somebody to challenge it. I mean, I think it needs to be done at some point and just figure out, does it stick? And I think Panini might try it, because they got to do something with Fanatics. And the only thing they can do is try and level the playing field if they really want to stay in this hobby. When it comes to product, one of the things that Ruben recently said, which I've been kind of talking about for years, is when I see a $1 million+ card in a regular PSA slab, it makes me sick. And it's not because it's PSA, because, like I said, I cracked one of those open the other day with my bare hands. I'm sorry, that dang thing better be bulletproof. Okay. Yeah. And why do we not have a premium case, even to put that case in, like a true one? I like slab mags and stuff like other people do, but I'm talking about to really represent that card and its value and its how special it is. Why do we not have a case for that? Like a true, beautiful crystal case or something that literally accents that card and says, this is a big card. This is why this is in this. Because if you already have that much money in a card, you're going to pay to protect it. But nobody offers that right now. Nobody. And when Nat Turner had that brought up to him the other day on one of the other shows, he's like, yeah, but that's more of like a third party thing to do. That's not something we're going to probably do. It'd be interesting to see in the hobby. So it's like, okay, so they have their window that they're willing to stop at. I would love to see a sapphire crystal case, sapphire from a watch crystal, a whole case. So how nice and pretty that would look if you had a Mickey Mantle, 52 Mantle sitting in that thing. You would just stare at it all day. It's beautiful.
Well, here, Skeppy says, now we're back to 1.5-inch bricks again, but we would obviously not crush the card in there. So, yep. Yeah, I mean, listen, I hear you, and I have heard Michael Rubin make that comment that the slabs just aren't worthy of the cards that they're housing. And I mean, I've got some thoughts on that. Of course I do. I think we all do. But at the end of the day, it's not really hurting the values of the cards, and PSA can still charge 20, whatever they charge to slab a $250,000 card. I don't know. I've never done it, but $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to slab a card that's worth a ton of money. The hobby's still eating that up. And so it would be nice.
They don't have a choice. They don't have another choice. I mean, PSA, the brand PSA holds the most value on a return right now. That's why most people grade with them. If it was a level playing field, who knows what that would really look like, to be honest. And we all keep saying, if Beckett gets bought by somebody, how many people would be willing to go back to Beckett? So that's a big deal if people are already thinking that way. We already know the leadership at Beckett can't get it done. Whatever's going on over there is not good or working, but you still have the hobby willing to do it if it changes.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
means there's perceived value still sitting in Beckett, because there's no way a BGS True 9.5 should be undervalued at PSA 9. I'm sorry. That makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all. It's a branding thing, and it's a perception thing, and it's a what can I get for it from the flippers at the card show thing?
Correct.
What can I get for it on eBay sort of thing? And I think that the savvy collectors, buyers, investors, whatever you want to call all of us, whatever, the savvy ones are finding value. Like there's a opportunity for this arbitrage type of thing now. Go buy BGS 9s that are true mint plus. Yep. Maybe they will cross over if you wanted to sell it into a PSA 10 or a PSA 9 even. There are cards that could become BGS pristine black labels currently sitting in PSA 10 holders. There's probably some sitting in PSA 9 holders for that matter.
Yeah, but people are too scared to pull that trigger.
Right. But that's the thing. Yet that PSA 10 card is going to sell for a fraction of the BGS 10 black label because it's not in the B. So what the state of the hobby? One of the states of the hobby is that so many people, you're paying for the holder and the label versus the card. And I've totally shifted. I used to do that too up until a few years ago, when now it's like, I don't really care what the grade says so much. I'm going to trust my own ability to grade that card first, and I'm going to bring eye appeal into it, because I'm not going to see all the little flaws in a card that PSA would see under their microscope or tag grading would see based on their imaging, right? I'm not going to see that, but I'm still going to buy a card that I like the looks of and not worry about the grade. There are nicer 8s than there are 9s. I've got a PSA 4 card that's nicer than several 8s I've seen before. It's just...
And we've seen cards get a PSA 10 that are so far off center, it's not funny. It's just, I think if we had more transparency on how to pre-grade our cards before we send them, we'd have a better understanding of what we assume we're really going to get. Because people don't know what they're all looking. I mean, edges, corners, centering, surface. We know that. But I don't even know if the corner's lightly dinged, what's that off? And how dinged? I don't know that rule. If I did, I can pre-grade my card easier and go, okay, if I want a 10 only, because most cards at 9 are the same as raw, I won't even send it in. But they want you to send it in to fail because they're making more money that way. I get it. Yeah. I just want a better chance of being able to actually get what I'm looking for out of the card.
Yeah. No, exactly.
So I hear do I go work somewhere for a month or two just to figure it out and then come back?
Take the course, right? Take the course. Let's do some comments, and then we're going to do the Mint Inc. $50 giveaway. But first, let's do comments. Jake Dahl says he's surprised Upper Deck hasn't made unlicensed baseball and football cards, and I guess at this point, I think I agree. There's probably money to be made there.
They're so content with what they do and with the way that family wants to run Upper Deck. I think they have prestige to them, and that's not something that they want to try because they respect the hobby differently, and they don't even want to break that rule because they don't want somebody to start taking what they already have.
Yeah, I like that. I hope that's the right reason, because I like that. The professor says producers are to blame in the specific instance that some hockey cards are less expensive in Canada, but the producer does not allow sales and shipping to the U.S. from Canada. Upper Deck's got some rules around their product and distribution thereof. Bob Boozle says that Hamm is throwing out some Brian Grayish type ideas tonight. Vintage says, so you'd rather have the frame be more beautiful than the actual painting. I didn't take it as you saying that, Hamm.
I wanted to accent what is so special about the card and why it's so nice. Like if you see that, it's because it's a big deal, not because I went and paid for, they shouldn't even allow you to put a cheap card into it. Like there would be a rule on the case. Like this case is for this type of card and higher. Otherwise, don't come talk to me.
I could see something like that. DA says I'd go back to BGS in a heartbeat. Well, you can go back to BGS. They haven't gone anywhere yet. Yeah. Rome Rants letting everybody know there are some big cards closing on memory lane tonight. Who is in on the action? Foul Ball says I collect cardboard, not plastic. And that's I don't mind having my cards in plastic. I like it, but I also collect the card. Jacob, I max out at $300 on cards, buy for 100, hold and sell for 300 is in your wheelhouse. It's great to have a wheelhouse. At least you know.
Well, that's a good wheelhouse because that's an affordable wheelhouse for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Once you start hitting that $400 or $500 range, you cut out a massive amount of people.
Totally. Skeppy says we're in the era where we think something has to be bought to be changed. It all comes down to timing and the ability for a company to really pay attention to the market. BGS just has to be better. Certainly agree with that last part. Not that I disagree with the early part, but I certainly do agree with that. Bob Boozle says, I feel like Hamm and Brian Gray could team up and win the grand prize on $25,000 pyramid. Dylan Rantucci says, Upper Deck does make unlicensed with Goodwin champions, unless he's mistaken. So, not league license, but at least.
Yeah, it's kind of unlicensed because I don't know if it's considered unlicensed because like some of the players that they use, they just own the rights to that are in a sport that's licensed by somebody else. So some of the cards are unlicensed, but I don't think all of them are.
Yeah, I think the licensing may come from the I forget the name of it right now, but like the Retired Player Association or something. You know what I think there's something
they usually
like that.
Don't use sport photos in there anyway for a lot of stuff, or it's so vague you wouldn't know one way or another.
Jay Giuliano says, how about this concept? The general hobby is not particularly strong at what value is and means. Pick your card, pick your sport, pick your non-sport card without comps. Seems people are lost. Yeah, it sure does seem like a lot of people are lost without comps. But
they're horrible without comps.
Comps move around. So not everybody sticks to comps like right on target. Otherwise, things would never change.
Well, I have a card that I looked up the other day, and the last two comps were $50 and $130, and they're a month apart. I don't know what to do with that.
Exactly. Michael Stone says Upper Deck still has the best product. I agree. I think Upper Deck makes the highest quality, best looking cards on a continuous basis. Will Bennett says, I try to stay away from PSA. Their cases feel cheap and the labels look horrible. I will say I do like their newest slab better than the old slab, but if you go back in time, I mean, they were at the time what they were. They were as good as they could maybe be.
But their reason for changing is because they don't want to mess up what people already have. But can you run a company like that long term? I mean, at some point, it has to change enough to be different.
When you have 90-something% of the market share, I think you can. But hey, big companies that have 93% of market share end up going out of business eventually too. I'm not saying PSA will. No. I would rather see PSA evolve and adapt versus go out of business because they have a great thing going there. So
if PSA didn't have a registry, would they be able to have the hold on the hobby that they do?
Oh man,
because that really holds a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no. I think the registry is their secret sauce. I really think it is. I really think it is. Let's switch it up. Let's talk a bit about what's been going on with scanning, X-ray, CT scanning, unopened product. I've heard the two extremes of how this is going to impact the hobby. I've heard from the card companies will have this figured out in 3 minutes, all the way to this is a major problem that is going to impact the way the hobby operates moving forward. Where do you fall? What do you think the scope of this issue truly is?
The problem's going to be to figure out who do you assume has scanned something. And then, like, for instance, if BBC starts scanning things for what they do, which would be great because, let's face it, sometimes you're like, I don't know if they know what they're really doing. We're just assuming because that's what they do as a job. Obviously, they failed on the Pokemon Logan Paul thing with the G.I. Joe. Scanner would have been great for that. But at what point do they not look further if you're just sitting there and have the free time to look through product and then you know what's in product? Like, you have the inside scoop. It's the same thing I've said about people that originally the scanning thing came out. It was targeted towards Panini. Okay. And that guy that had the only other picture on there was him walking through with the logo man through what looked like possibly Panini's, business. So he might've been saying, hey, they can't pull the card out through packaging because of the way distribution works when they're packaging a card out, but they can look for it and then know where it is. That's how I took that. And a lot of people took it as, everybody can use this. Like, whoa. This guy was targeting somebody first. He only tagged 2 Panini accounts. He didn't tag the whole community. And we kind of missed that part. We just took it and ran with it. And first of all, if he knows about this, then how long have they been doing this? And at that point, are you being scammed because you're only looking for logo mint? Because there's other cards worth money. And then you don't know what condition that card is when it comes out. And what happens if a player pops off later after you scanned it and you didn't remember if he's in there? And there's all these nuances that can go on. You almost can't worry about it. I would be more interested for somebody to go into open a break on a scanned product that says we got 4 Jordan rookies in this case, 4 in this box, and then sell them per card per pack. That way it's really at random, and you just pull.
Yeah, I think you hit the big issue is how long has it been going on for? And then my biggest concern with this, because a lot of people are saying, well, it only affects the highest end products. It doesn't affect lower end products, and they can only see certain cards. I've seen video where they can read names on flat cards too.
Yeah, I've been told they can see every card.
And then my biggest concern is the technology, and I don't know much about it, but every technology, I mean, now we have every gadget, in a phone, we everything, a scanner, a camera, a video recorder, it's on there. Eventually, we have the weatherman in here. We got we got our calendar. We can get
your temperature, your heartbeat, your blood pressure,
the worldwide marketplace. We got everything in there. Eventually, I think that this scanning technology, I mean, maybe it'll be in your phone. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know.
Or on Temu, you can buy one for your house, and it's just a little box.
Exactly. It's going to be smaller. It's going to be like the personal computer in the 60s. You needed a whole building just to house it. Now you put a computer in your pocket. I can see the technology advancing like that, and eventually everyone can have it. At which point, well, then what? Why are we even packaging the cards out of the manufacturer?
We won't. I think we go digital at that point. That's when you start, the NFT comes back, and you start just digital format. And if you want to do digital print, you can do that too. But the only way to secure it, and you got to hope that even on the back end, again, things are hackable. Once it's on the computer, somebody can get in there. Okay, right. That's just how things work.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always another angle. There's always going to be another story. There's always going to be somebody that says, I want this $1 million card and I can make it happen. That's the game we're in right now.
All right, before we start to wrap up and get to the comments that are coming in, we're going to do the Mint Ink giveaway right now, guys. Mint Ink out of Toronto, 2 locations. Great sponsor and partner of the channel. They're giving away a $50 gift card to somebody in the chat on Sports Cards Live every Saturday night through the end of this year. We're going to do the giveaway right now, and I'm going to mark my place on the comments so I don't lose my spot here, guys. So let me actually, no, I want to do this quick. I'm going to just run through a couple more. Mike Stone says PSA went away from the new slab due to the blemish it had, but they have other. I think I like the new slab for the thicker cards, but thank you, Michael Stone, for clarifying. Chris C says without the registry, no. Rob Sonier says I don't think the registry is that big of a deal. It's all about resale value. If BGS was selling higher, Beckett would be top dog. I think this is a chicken and egg, Rob. I think you're on the wrong side of the chicken and egg. I think PSA does sell higher because of the registry. So BGS couldn't sell higher. Yeah. I think that's what
causes people to stick with them because they're trying to do something.
Exactly. It's very competitive. Skeppy says, I do think Ham is onto something with creating unique slabs for special cards. If done right, the slab could become very sought after. That's one thing BGS could do better. Michael Stone says, registry is saving PSA in the vintage world. Multiple vintage dealers told me they are shifting to SGC because the newer team at PSA doesn't care much about the registry. Very interesting. I can't see them not caring about it, though. I think they have to recognize how powerful it is.
Don't they have an event just for people that are in their registry at the national, I believe?
They have the national, they have the registry luncheon awards. Yeah. God is great. Says, hello from the Rising Sun, Japan. Welcome to this channel. God is great. Jay Giuliani, can someone not bring boxes through TSA anymore because how are they scanned, sequencing? Yeah, science. Chrissy says, I have hundreds of sealed boxes dating back to the 80s. I heard it affects high-end boxes like Flawless more than the basic stuff I own, like Bowman and Topps. It's scary and very disgusting. I think we all agree with that. Professor says manufacturers should have intuition about what CT scanning can show, either because they are doing it secretly or they know how the cards are produced and which condition or production elements can show up. Jacob Goodrow, but I can't store meaningless NFTs in boxes in my basement. Dylan Rantucci says, I'm just planning the Van City show with Rome. Is everyone staying at Pinnacle? I believe so, Dylan. I believe everyone is staying at the Pinnacle Hotel right close to the Vancouver Convention Center. Jay Giuliano says, can I win and have you give it away to someone else? Yes, you can. If you win the Mint Ink giveaway, you can have me give it to somebody else. Or you can tell me who you want to give it to, Jay. We don't have an issue with that. Skeppy says, physical cards need to become a digital experience. The unique digital value should be unlocked from the physical card. Very interesting. I think there's going to be resistance, but I think it is also naturally going to happen over time. I think it'll be a slow build.
Well, Upper Deck had the Evolve set in the past, which would become a physical card, but you had to go online to redeem it because you didn't know how good of a card you would get. So let's say you'd get a Barry Bonds card that's going to be a game used bat. You'd go to Evolve to see if you would get one that would numbered or, you know, paralleled out. And that's how they did that in the early 2000s with Evolve.
Yep. Good call. And Foul Ball says if PSA up charges, they should upgrade the slab. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense right there. At least give me something more than the cheap plastic slab. Give me a nice holder for my card. All right, Mint Ink giveaways right now, guys. What you're going to have to do is I'm going to put something on the screen, hashtag Mint Ink and a number. You'll see it when I put it on there. Put it into the chat. Put the hashtag in your comment. It has to be exactly this or your vote will not register. We are going to start this right now, guys. In the chat, type in hashtag mintink7, hashtag mintink7 for a chance to win a $50 gift card to mintink.ca, mintink.ca. And we will let this entry start coming in. We have 3 so far. So I know they're going to come in quickly here. We have over 75 people watching on YouTube, over 40 on Twitter, Instagram. If you're on Instagram, you cannot enter the giveaway. You got to come over to YouTube to get your entry in. If you're watching on Instagram, come to YouTube. You don't have much time. You don't have much time to enter because we're going to wrap this up pretty quick. If you are watching on delay, too bad, so sad. I can't help you if you're watching on delay. But here we go. We've got 27 entries now. It's always nice to see everybody in the chat. Welcome everybody to the show. I've been enjoying this one with Mr. Hamm.
I've had a great time.
This has been a lot of fun for sure. Jay Giuliano says, give it away when I win. We can do that.
I like
Tom Newman says, pick me. We just might pick you, Tom Newman. Okay, we're stalled out at 28 entries. On YouTube, we have 79 people right now on YouTube. Maybe if you just came over from Instagram, 79 people on YouTube right now, guys. Get your, good question from Mid-Atlantic. Has my regulation presentation dropped? It hasn't. I've had to sort of second guess that whole thing, Mid-Atlantic. So bear with me. I got to kind of go through it again. So be patient. I will hopefully get to that in the near future, but I've kind of shelved it temporarily. Let me put it to you that way. And I'm sorry if that's disappointing, but I just kind of had to. Dylan says, I'm going to keep it if I win it. Thank you, Gary Keith. I'll see you next weekend. Thanks, Ed. Glad you've enjoyed it for sure. Thanks, Jacob Gaudreau. Good to see you. If you guys aren't subscribed to Sports Cards Live, take a moment. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like, notifications, all those things that YouTubers say. There's Joe Perot got his entry in right there. If you've already won this in the past, you're not eligible to win it again. I'll mention that. I'm gonna hit the draw button right now, guys. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Here we go. Let's see who's going to win the $50.
When this goes through here, you don't ever want to see your name.
No.
Because it rarely pops up twice.
Whoa.
Oh, look at that.
Didn't you win, Bill? I think he won already. Tell me if you won before, Bill. I need to know, please, or we're going to do this again. Or who was the name before him that came up?
I don't know. I was just waiting for the last one to pop up.
Yeah. Tom Newman says it's rigged. I don't know, Tom.
Yeah.
No, first time winner. Okay. And I know Webo too. He's as honest as they come. All right. You are the winner, Bill. Thank you for, I don't know why I thought you did. Maybe you came in second in a previous week. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks everybody for joining that as well. Bill, I need you to send me an email with your email so I have your email address, and Mint Ink will send you your code to use on mintink.ca. Jake thought Yeah, maybe. Hey, Dan the Card Man's been entering. Maybe he'll win. He's eligible. Everyone's eligible.
I mean, I've tried to win too. I came close.
Yeah, you've come close too. I've seen you towards the end as well. Sorry, Jay, I can't do that, but I will. Thank you, Brendan Ryan says live stream excellence. I greatly appreciate that. Ham, let's wrap this up, man. This has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join. Glad I got to have you on, man. It's been a long time coming. So thank you very much. I'll give you a chance for some last comments to myself and the crowd.
No, I appreciate you bringing me on. I mean, I'm a talker. I got a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts, and that's just what I do. Like, I want to create. I'm glad you enjoyed that card that I made of you. Again, I like custom cards and that, and I think that's a portion of the hobby that a lot of the people haven't caught up to yet, is these people that are doing their own custom cards that are out there. Blender of Zombie, Card Cutter, a couple, I'm just skipping my mind, but I know a few of them now. Yeah, Card Killer. Have you ever seen Card Killer's hat before? He's made a hat out of refractor. Oh my God, they're not cheap, but man, that's a beautiful hat. Like that stuff, and I know some now have been pulled into Tops to do some cards that they're inserts. So I'm glad to see that happening and they're being adopted by the hobby. But sketch cards, I love sketch cards when they're done right. I collect everything, guys. Yeah. I mean, literally, it doesn't matter if it's sport, non-sport. I just like cool, fun, unique stuff, and that's what makes the hobby enjoyable to me. Is the crossover as well. It doesn't have to be one thing, and I just love that.
Right on, man. Well, it's been great. It's been a fun show for sure. That I can tell the chat enjoyed it. Let's run through final comments, then we are done. Skeppy says, good show. Mark Santucci had a great time. Michael Stone, thank you so much. Rob Sonier, much appreciate that. Thank you for being here. Foul ball. I got to get used to foul ball instead of foul five ball, but great to see you. His name is Jeremy as well. Great to see you, Jeremy. Will Bennett, glad to have you live. I will see you in Toronto. Yankees fan, thank you so much. Mid-Atlantic. I was on the Collector Creative podcast called Hobby Hustle with Zach Nygett, who's a great guy in the hobby. Thank you, Mid-Atlantic. Appreciate that very much. Philly Joe, good to have you. Thank you. Jacob Goodrow. Yeah, I hear that, right? For sure. Good to see you. The professor wants to know your Instagram handle, Michael. What is it?
It's NJH Productions, or just type in Michael Hamm. It comes up under both.
And thank you, Jeff McMahon. Appreciate it very much. Robert Scott, thank you so much. Appreciate that, guys. If you're in Calgary or area, I will be at the Acadia show next Saturday. I'll be at the Philly show. I'll be at the Van City show. I'll be at the Montreal Expo, the Toronto Expo, and I'll be snapping selfies, guys. So let's say hi, fist pump, and all that. Can't wait for it. I'll be back tomorrow night here on the channel with Josh Madigan from the Hockey Cards Gong Show podcast to cover the end of the hockey auction on Fanatics Collect. Very excited for that. We'll see you next week, Gary. Good to see you in the chat here as always. With that, everybody, this episode of Sports Cards Live for September the 7th, 2024, on behalf of Mr. Michael Hamm and myself, Jeremy Lee, is now over.